grander conspiracy here that the FBI is all behind it. Having read through thousands of pages of FBI emails, I mean, it should be ridiculous on its face, but once you read these emails and see how many problems there were from the FBI in the lead up to January 6th, it really starts to seem absolutely ridiculous.
It's always interesting to me, Ryan, that anti-government conspiracy theorists think the government is terrible and incompetent until it suits their conspiracy theory. And then suddenly they're all geniuses and all able to do everything that they want them to do. Speaking of this, I think this conspiracy is key. In the Smith filing, he talks about this idea of undercover agents. And he says, look, we don't want to allow defendants to introduce evidence about undercover actors because that would inevitably lead to confusing many trials on collateral issues, such as the identities and intentions of the alleged undercover actors. For example, it may require the government to introduce evidence to show that people whom the defendant alleges were undercover actors were actually his vehement supporters. Ryan, you've written about this, and I find this to be one of the most critical elements of any prosecution about Trump on January 6th. How can we stop that from happening? How can you prove a negative? Because Trump supporters, as you sort of pointed out, have long pushed this theory that this is all this sort of Scooby-Doo conspiracy theory that if you pull off the mask, it was Antifa, but if you pull off the other mask, it's the Trump supporter, but that person is innocent. How do you stop that in court?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost comical, but it does become this big distraction and this big time waster. There was a recent case, and I wrote about this last week, but there's been even a more recent case since my piece last week involving someone that people alleged was a Antifa supporter who ended up, lo and behold, just to be a Trump supporter. But it's happened time and time again. One of the sort of most hilarious examples to me is that there's an individual who two people on the very day of, there were two people dressed in black, and people were yelling in the crowd at that moment, getting sucked into these conspiracy theories, saying, they're Antifa, they're Antifa. What was that based on? Basically, if you were wearing black or if you're smashing windows, you were automatically assumed to be Antifa, right? There was not like a deep inquiry into the political ideology of the individuals smashing the windows at the time. It was just like, they have to be Antifa. And then lo and behold, one of them was a guy who went around to Trump rallies, was one of the quote unquote front row Joes who went to Trump rallies because he went around the country, got in line, and was one of the first people in line for a lot of Trump rallies. The other individual was actually just arrested more recently, and he's also a deep Trump supporter. I went back and scrolled through his Facebook page back in 2020, and it's pro-Trump meme after pro-Trump meme, anti-Biden meme after anti-Biden meme. And then there's the fact, of course, that he tried to storm the Capitol after Donald Trump said you have to fight like hell. So it just happens time and time again where there's supposed to be this next mystery under the, it's going to be under the next door, and they just fail over and over and over again. But at some point, it kind of gets into the, a lot of people start to believe it. And a lot of Trump supporters really do believe that this was some undercover Antifa operation. And so Donald Trump would, if he has the opportunity to, take advantage of that to any extent that he could.
Ryan Reilly, thank you so much for starting us off this evening.